Hello and welcome back to Now You Know. I'm your host, Dale Wilson. Today we have a special guest. He is one of the board members of Peninsula Area Public Access. He is Patrick McInnes, and he is a most talented film aficionado, a former e-entertainment producer, and also an independent producer, but also an excellent teacher out at the North Olympic Peninsula Skills Center. So Patrick, welcome, and thank you for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction. I spend so much time on the other side of the camera that coming up here in front of the camera, it's kind of a little nerve-wracking.
Makes a little fish out of the water type thing.
It does.
Great. Patrick, tell us a little bit about how you found your way from sunny Southern California to up here in Port Angeles.
Yeah, well, I was down in Southern California, specifically Los Angeles, working in the television industry for NBC Universal and E-Entertainment and a few other companies down there. But my fiance and we're just planning on, starting a family, getting married and everything, and we did not see that happening in the concrete prison of Los Angeles. So we spent a year actually, and we had something like 20 cities all across the United States that we were slowly researching and narrowing down of like where we would imagine raising a family. And we actually got it all the way down between Port Angeles and Asheville, North Carolina. So on the whole opposite sides. Port Angeles just won out. We came up here and just fell in love with it. I mean, it's obviously one of the most beautiful spots in America. And I just really felt that the energy, the community was something that was lacking in, like a big metropolis like Los Angeles. And that's what we really wanted was, a good school system for, eventual kids and everything. And all of the signs just pointed to Port Angeles, and we didn't hesitate. We were like, let's do it.
Terrific. Asheville would have been a great choice too, and they have a great sprawling metropolis there now, so that may be something that you were trying to avoid.
Yeah.
But they have some great universities there, and was mountains a part of your search process? Because Asheville happens to be in the mountains as well.
Yeah, actually, mountains, not only mountains, but like forested mountains is actually one of my favorite topographies, I guess, if people have favorite topographies. So when we were looking around, nature was a big element because my fiance was coming from the Midwest, Ohio, where it's nice and flat, and we're both from a Northern California town originally that's more up in the mountains, so we're more used to the kind of, Northern California redwoods type lush environment, and that's just kind of, we wanted to harken back towards that in the small town community too, because the town that we grew up in it's called Red Bluff in California, and it has a population of 13,000. So actually Port Angeles is a little bit bigger than that. So we're very used to small town community, and having spent so much time in other places around the U.S., her in Ohio and the Midwest, and me down in Southern California, we just kind of wanted to come back to that kind of home base type community, but not Red Bluff. We wanted to get out of California. That was like a pretty a big thing, and then one of the things that made it, well, not the only thing, but one of the things that drew us to this side as opposed to North Carolina was just being West Coast residents for our childhood and whatnot. So we kind of wanted to keep that, because even though it's a very different culture up here as opposed to down in Southern California, still all along the West Coast, there's a very kind of standard, unique, mentality. I know you come from Tennessee originally, right? So you also know that it's just a very different atmosphere.
Absolutely. And I grew up in a small town in Tennessee, and one of the things about it, I checked back about a year ago. The population then was about 1,000 people. The population now is about 1,000 people. And I asked one of the people that I'd known there for a long time, why does Pinson never grow? And he said, well, there's the situation where every time a child is born, a man has to leave town. Patrick, you are one of the founding board members for PAPA. And full disclosure, Patrick and I both are members of the Peninsula Area Public Access. What was it that attracted you to PAPA when you came to town?
Well, when I first moved up here, which was a year ago, it was in the summer of 2015, and I didn't necessarily think that I would be continuing my career in television and film. I thought that I would be career jumping. I actually have a television show that I helped develop down at E! Entertainment called Total Divas. It's still running right now. So the residuals and everything from that was carrying me across the kind of threshold of moving to a new place and getting situated. And I pretty much thought I was going to career jump to something else, or have to kind of centralize a little more towards the metropolis up here of, you know, the SeaTac area. But we really did not want to do that. We were trying to do whatever we could to stay here, and just kind of, it was like almost perfect timing. I got in touch with you and just kind of fell into the public access, started to attend the board meetings. I saw immediately the passion that everybody had with the public access becoming a thing in this community. And I just knew with my own experience working at the network level for E-Entertainment, NBC Universal, I had a lot of things, a lot of knowledge of how procedures and stuff go that I knew I could lend to everybody. And so we started working on developing the website, I believe, first. Got that up and going, and then started to focus on getting programming, and then the technical side of getting all the equipment. And and all of a sudden, it's like about a year to the day later, and maybe even a little less than a year later, we're not only broadcasting up and going on the airwaves, but now we got a little studio and everything.
A big studio.
Yeah, big studio. It's all developing pretty well, so it's pretty exciting, and I'm glad to be a part of it on the ground level. It provides a type of, it's rewarding. When you're working down in Los Angeles, I was working on productions for E, like E! News, Live from E, things that are actually broadcast to over 80 countries around the world and viewed by like millions of people every day. Now, it's not that same type of market here, but it's even more rewarding in the sense of down there's like so little time. You finish something, you move on to the next thing, and it's just rush, and nobody cares. It's just like impersonal. Whereas up here, even the littlest thing I do, people notice, and it actually is affecting people's lives. It's providing communication around the peninsula and informing people about different things that are going on. It's much more gratifying than giving the world the Kardashians.
It's very rare when somebody's preparation actually lends itself to the next career move, and your preparation and you're becoming an instructor at the North Olympic Peninsula Skills Center seem to fit hand in glove. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
It's really interesting because I've never seen myself as a teacher. In fact, my parents, my mother is actually a superintendent of a school district in Northern California, and then my grandparents were also teachers back in the day. So I come from a long line of family of instructors. But because of that, I kind of rebelled against it in my youth, and it's like, that's something I'm never going to do. I'm just going to go out and, create for myself. And coming up here, I found, again, the passion. There was one message that kind of really struck a chord with me, and that is I was talking to some of the youth, and some people were talking about how they would like to get involved in making movies and the Hollywood culture, but they're so far removed from it, being not only 2 states away from Hollywood, but also just where we're located in the peninsula, the size of the town and everything is kind of removed, and almost people I think here feel like they're a little bit forgotten about in terms of the rest of pop culture around the world. And that's something I related to growing up in that small town of Red Bluff. I grew up saying I want to be in television, I want to be in film, and I had instructors when I was in high school just basically laugh at me and say, hey, you got to deal with the cards you're given, and this isn't Hollywood, this is a small town of 13,000 people, you're never going to make it. Flat out tell me I'm never going to be able to do that, and that what it did to me was motivate me. I was like, yeah, I'm never going to do it. You'll see. You don't know me. You don't know what I can accomplish. And I went down there and spent the next 13 years pursuing that, and ultimately becoming pretty successful at it. I won 2 Telly Awards, a Synopsis Model D Award for digital media, and was nominated for an Emmy in 2011 for my coverage of the Royal Wedding in London. So I mean, I kind of rose to acclaim in the international television community. So when I hear that same mentality reflected by the youth up here, it reminded me of, kind of being pigeonholed in my youth. And I'm like, well, that's that's not how it is. If you have the passion, you have the heart, you really want to do it, you can get into it, no matter where you're from. So I really wanted to come into this community and really, more so than my knowledge and experience and everything, share with everybody that idea of like, no, the Olympic Peninsula is not forgotten about. You can go into the heart of, pop culture, whatever you want to do, society, and really make that impact, So that kind of led me over to the Skill Center, and they actually, again, just perfect timing for me. We're actually looking for a media instructor to pick up their media program, which was dwindling at the time. I think it was down to 1 or 2 students. So I had a conversation with the director of the Skills Center, Jody Potter, and we kind of talked about what a potential curriculum would be in my experience and what I could bring to a classroom environment. And that really got her excited. And then, once she brought me on board and we just started to kind of go with it, it's just starting to grow and grow in popularity. The program's becoming bigger and bigger. I guess it culminated ultimately with the Skills Center becoming involved in the newly established Film Commission up here in Port Angeles with the summer film project that we just did last summer session.
That's something else I wanted to get to, and you just jumped ahead, but that's quite all right. My understanding is, as a result of the PAPA Film Commission, you were able to land the first actual major professional film shoot right here in Clallam County this past summer. Talk about that some.
So one of the things that I have been interested in bringing to the table here for Peninsula Area Public Access was the idea of a film commission. For those of you who don't know, the purpose of a film commission is to gather incentives and resources around the communities to attract independent or studio-produced production companies to come and film their projects right here in the community. And of course that benefits the community in several ways, not only for people coming and staying and spending money on food and everything here, but also job-wise of crewing these types of productions with local crew members. So we started to establish the film commission here, started to get some of those resources and local businesses together to help incentivize those production companies. And just this last, at the end of June, we had a small team of 4 members, and that included a director, 2 producers, and a cinematographer, came up here from Los Angeles. I believe they arrived here something like June 24th and stayed through to July 6th. So that was a good 2.5 weeks that they were up here, and we shot a small project just over the course of 5 or 6 days that was able to use crew members from the community, from Peninsula Area Public Access and beyond, and then also the students of my summer school session at the North Olympic Peninsula Skills Center were able to get involved and actually crew not just a student film, because we could have taken it 2 ways. We could have done a student film that was all just them, but I really wanted to give the students that real exposure to real film. So we approached it like we wanted to do a real production and make it as completely professional, and that's why we had people come up from LA who are working in the industry. In fact, the director, right after wrapping on our project, flew out to do a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, and then right after that, he's actually scheduled to do a Al Pacino movie. So they're coming straight from the industry and straight from the film industry. And so the experience that all of the people got up here was a true, movie set experience. And then also carrying it on, we are, and especially the LA team, are expecting to carry the film onto, distribution and film festivals and the like. So I think we haven't heard the last of it from up here. We should be able to, I think, ascertain some recognition and even some awards for that project. So it's really encouraging.
Patrick, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want you to talk a little bit about the subject of that film and how it reflects upon the local culture. We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back to Now You Know. I'm your host, Dale Wilson. Our special guest today is Patrick McInnes. In our first segment, we were talking about the recent film shoot that was completed here in Clallam County by a professional Los Angeles film company. And one of the story was about a local legend. But the one thing that I wanted to mention about that is I was on the set for a while on 2 or 3 different occasions, and the greatest takeaway for me in that was the generosity of spirit and the teaching experience that these professionals from LA, known for its haughty abruptness, but they were absolutely generous with their time and the energy that they put into teaching the North Olympic Peninsula Skills Center students the craft that they had spent so many years learning. So Patrick, talk about the storyline of that story, but also if you feel the same, encapsulate the idea of those guys being not only professionals but teachers as well.
Absolutely. It's really interesting right now, the whole kind of trend in Hollywood, speaking from experience, is to get out of Hollywood and film projects outside. With technology advancing so much, Hollywood, or I should say the TV and film industry, are less dependent on the studio system as they once were. So it's part of the timing of creating a film commission and getting them to come up into this real kind of world setting. Is perfect timing. And what I found, especially with this project and then coming up, is that's twofold in that down in Los Angeles, we touched on it in the first segment, people in the industry can get kind of jaded, can get kind of cynical about it. When you're doing something for so long, day after day after day, it becomes commonplace and even becomes a little bit tiresome. So I think when the film crew came up here and they saw that passion and that excitement from the students specifically, but all the members from the community in this film project, and actually being on set and seeing the process of film take place and being a part of that, everybody was just so excited to be there, and that energy is contagious. And I even had the cinematographer, who's a union director of photography, very well decorated, actually told me afterwards that it kind of reinvigorated his love for film. He was getting kind of over the whole industry, and actually working with the kids and everything up here kind of reminded him why he loved it in the first place, and it gave him like a reinvigoration. And that is just, I could not be more proud. And the kids just took to it like, so well. In fact, that same cinematographer, I've heard through the grapevine, he's actually giving his normal first AC, who's a first assistant camera, who the director of photography works really hand in hand. He gives them a hard time because a 16-year-old girl up here can pull focus better than they can, is what he tells them. So yeah,
what a great compliment.
I know that it's actually pretty impressive. That's a skill that takes years to kind of master, but the excitement of everybody, especially that person, the student who was performing that duty, was
let's
just
give her a
so
shout out.
focused.
What's her name?
Bridget. Yeah,
Bridget
she
did a great job.
Did a fantastic job. But everybody did. Everybody, all the students did. I was just so amazed, and they were too. In fact, many times the film crew, we'd have a conversation about it, and they were just like, "Man, I'm amazed that this is a student crew, let alone of high school age."
Well, that speaks well of your instruction before they got here.
Well, thank you. But to go more into the project, it's like you said, yeah, it actually originated from here. We wanted to really, one of the things, not only to kind of showcase the beauty, the natural beauty of the area, but also kind of the beauty of the culture. And costume designer, art director, Joseph Bennett is actually a member of the Lower Elwha Sklallam tribe here in Port Angeles. And so an idea arose of like taking kind of sort of traditional story from their mythology and actually doing an interpretation of it that's more modern, that kind of blends the kind of now and the past together. So the project has the working title of Father of the Woods. But working title only because the title is usually one of the last things that actually gets put onto a movie, so that title will likely change. But it actually incorporated a mythological creature that's from Sklallam history called See It Go. And we actually did a lot of research into this and actually leaned heavily on Joseph's knowledge to make sure that in the design of the project, especially when showcasing the Native American aspects of the culture, that we were staying specifically true to Elwha, as opposed to Cherokee or maybe a generic interpretation of Native American culture. So it was really specific goal of ours to really capture the spirit of this area, and actually to even go beyond that, part of the dialogue and even some of the music is actually going to be translated by the Elwha tribe into the Sklallam language, so that it just will add that extra layer of authenticity to the project.
That's terrific. I hope they'll use English subtitles.
Yep, that's what we're planning on doing, yeah, so we all follow along.
But you know, and let me make a pitch toward Papa. We are actually showing some programming that discusses the Sklallam language, and even if somebody really wanted to, they could learn some in the same way that a lot of kids learned English from watching PBS, then you could pick up some of it from that programming.
Absolutely.
Who, or describe a typical student that comes to you for training at the Skill Center?
Obviously, a lot of people who come to the cinema and television production class at the North Olympic Peninsula Skills Center have some sort of passion about the process of film, television, or even the new short form media we're seeing on YouTube, or like the BuzzFeed internet type style videos. But not all the time. A lot of people I've noticed are coming into the class sort of just like semi-interested. Of course, they're familiar with movies. Of course, they have their own favorite movie, but they're really kind of testing the waters out to see if this is something that they could be interested in. That's why it's so encouraging when they stay on multiple sessions and there's actually something that grows inside them that actually, oh, this is something I am interested in. And of course, some people are interested more in film, some people are interested more in television, some people are interested more in YouTube. You know, it's to each their own. And even though it's all part of the same process, they're completely different animals within the industry. So they are vastly different.
You know, it serves your purposes very well to know that there is a media training at the Stevens Middle School. There's also at the Port Angeles High School, there's an instructor out there that does media production, and also at Peninsula College there's a media arts program. With this type of infrastructure, what do you see as the long-range development goals for an outfit such as Papa or other combinations of media arts out here, as far as jobs and what recognition we can bring to the community?
Well, I'll tell you my super secret agenda, Dale, and that is I really want to bring that industry here. That's why I became so involved in public access. I became so involved with the Film Commission, and I have become so involved in the Skills Center. Is really right now, like I was saying, the kind of tone of the industry is to find these new places that haven't been overshot on film before, and coming up here and seeing the enthusiasm, the excitement and everything, that really is what I want to create up here, and I'm already starting to see that kind of manifest with the public access and people becoming more involved in that, and then starting to see how that type of media exposure can help business. Even though the public access doesn't commercialize anything, there's still an opportunity to get people to be aware of different businesses, different events, different things around the community. And so all of the different things in place was like a goal at the beginning to make sure that there was this infrastructure so that students could become involved, could become interested, and then if they wanted to continue on to higher education learning or onto a career, there is that kind of pipeline that leads to that area. So whether they're in the Stevens Middle School, the Port Angeles High School and their Writer News program, North Olympic Peninsula Skills Center and my program, or even Peninsula College, they have a media program up there. It actually just creates this natural pipeline that is starting to create more and more and more video producers within the community. And once we have enough of that, then really that's when outside production companies will really become interested in taking their productions here once there's a baseline of trained people who can work on their productions.
So instead of them having to bring an entire crew of 25 or 30 people, they can bring, like you said, the skeleton crew, 4 or 5 people, and know that they've got the trained individuals here that know the nomenclature, know the buzzwords, know how to get the job done, and that will save them probably 20-30% on their film budget if they can hire crews on the destination that they go to.
Exactly.
And here's another thing: they're already flying over us because there's an awful lot of filming being done in Vancouver and in British Columbia. So if they're already going to be this close, we might as well entice them down here to Port Angeles. Tell us about what businesses should be clamoring to be a part of this film commission.
Well, obviously, I mean, it can affect every type of, every part of the economy locally. A good example that a lot of people compare it to in this community is the whole Twilight phenomena that happened a few years back. But that, I mean, Forks out there are still, having events and bringing people from outside the community into the community to, celebrate those events. And that money comes in from outside, and is spent inside. But it goes well beyond, obviously, people who come from outside to Clallam County to shoot a film project. There, needs lodging, needs catering for the shoots. But even beyond that, I mean, things like just logistical things like truck rentals to carry equipment from point A to point B. The crew, the trained base of people who can operate so that, yeah, you only need to spend, plane tickets for, 5 people, and then you have a whole crew waiting to, jump onto the movie when you arrive. Literally, it could go everything as far as even like publicists in the area, journalists in the area, lawyers. There's so many. I mean, that's the thing about film and television, is that it literally encompasses almost every single industry there is. Carpentry, all sorts of things for set building and different things. It incorporates so much.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people don't really realize, I think, is like, oh, movies, well, we only have so many videographers here, so what's that going to do for me? But really, it will literally touch every single business that's in the area.
Well, I was astounded to realize after getting involved with Papa how many videographers there are out here already, how many independent producers. And I have discovered, I won't say I discovered them, but I have become aware of at least a half a dozen that I would have never suspected, and I'm sure you have run into more than you expected to be here. Have you seen the same thing that I have, that there are a lot of them out there actually doing the trade now?
Yes, and it's not so surprising to me because there's still, again, videography can encompass much more than just television. I know that there are videographers in the area that are contracted by the National Park Service or even by the government to do little films for inspection. Like I know one videographer who has been filming different segments of the Elwha River during this river reconstruction project, and those pieces of footage won't really ever see the light of day other than they're being sent to administrators in the National Park Service, and they're studying them to make different notes on conservation of where they need to come in and do a little bit more or to leave alone. So there's so much different room there, but there are a lot of people up here, and really that's the trend across the country. Film is still the most impacted major at the college level. Movies is still one of the biggest industries in the world. There's more money in movies than pretty much any other industry there is. I think video games just passed it. But other than that, I mean, entertainment media, they're all the same. And that's just really taking over. And it's becoming so much more and more and more and more that, I think now you can see it's not going anywhere. In fact, nowadays we're bombarded by media. As soon as you get on the internet, as soon as you wake up, there's all these different sources that throw media at you. So
and here's another. Speaking of job creation, when I was working in industry, a lot of our training was done by videos. And so what they would do was go in and video the first training class, but then show that to each succeeding training class. So talk about some more job opportunities in the next 45 seconds.
Yeah, well, I actually started in corporate training videos. Those were some of the first videos that I actually became involved with over 10 years ago. And yeah, absolutely, pretty much every type of job uses that type of format. Because nowadays, too, the new generation is so used to television, commercials, and everything like that, that you're going to engage them more. In fact, one of the things I found out about teaching at the Skill Center is, I'm actually teaching some of the kids more about English subjects, like things like protagonists, themes, motifs, stuff like that, than they're even learning from reading literature, and that's because of the amount of engagement. I had a professor in my college, actually, he would say, he'd bring up Shakespeare and everybody's eyes would glaze over. He'd bring up Darth Vader in Star Wars and boom, everybody's attentive because everybody knows those characters, are invested in those characters, and that's the same thing. Media is kind of the art form of today.
Great subject to end on. We've got to stop here. Now you know Dale Wilson for Peninsula Area Public Access, our special guest today, Patrick McInnes. Look forward to more of these. I'm your host, Dale Wilson.